How long have you known this?
We're going home, Cyril. We're going home as heroes. This began long before we got here. They've been planning it for years. They're doing this no matter what. We wanted to be together. You didn't seem to mind the promotions.
Good luck, Tetra.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 590 of Full of Sith. It's me, Bryan Young. We have a very special episode with you this week. I have recordings of my interviews with Tony Gilroy for Season 2 of Andor. The first was recorded while I was in Japan, and Tony Gilroy was in Japan, and we talked about the first bit of Andor Season 2. These were originally recordings for interviews for Script Magazine. And we really leaned into the writing aspects of Andor Season 2, so they're really interesting in that way, and they were recorded by phone and by Zoom. The second interview was after the season finale, so we really dived into spoilers, or the series finale rather, and how things wrapped up. So if you haven't watched the series, that's really on you to make sure you have watched it, but these are some really great interviews. I really enjoy talking to Tony Gilroy, and I think he did a really terrific job with Andor, and really grateful to get to talk to him again both these times, and hope that I get to talk to him in the future on whatever projects he works on. The man is just a really terrific writer and knows his craft really well, and every time I talk to him I learn a lot about writing, and I learn a lot about Star Wars, frankly. So without further ado, here's part one. So my hope is we can talk about the first arc of Andor, and then hopefully schedule a time to talk about the complete season.
Okay.
But I've seen everything, and it's pretty terrific what you were able to do. So
Thank you.
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
For the first arc, just jumping right into it, I know you've talked about not wanting to go a season per year and cutting down to one arc per year. And I'm curious how you identified, you said at the panel today that you tried to pick the most exciting 3 days, or few days in each year. How did you identify those days for this arc, and decide this was the jumping off point thematically for where you were going to end?
I think that when I first started to sketch the idea, first started to just play with it and go, okay, so 4 years, 4 blocks, what does that do? I was like, well, I kind of always knew that when I'd be coming back, I had the wedding to deal with. That was a bit of, that was a navigational point. And, so, wow, 3 episodes. I have the wedding. What if I do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday? What if I make it a 3-day wedding? All of a sudden, that idea is like, wow, that's pretty specific. I wonder I wonder if the other episodes, other blocks, can work that way. And I don't. I mean, I think at the very beginning I was probably like, well, that probably won't work, and I shouldn't be that doctrinaire, and I should let them breathe how they want to breathe. But in point of fact, they, as I sketched them, they they held true to that, and it was very pleasing to see them, get very pointed. Super intensity of time. So on the one hand, you're spreading out, really spreading time out. On the other one, you're really concentrating it. And that there are just so many. I can't even tell you the knock-on effect of this sort of solve to this problem that was sitting in front of us. It just kept turning into a better and better idea. Um, and honestly, not through any act of, I mean, not through any act of genius or anything. It just was like, wow, we got 4 blocks in 4 years, and what happens with that? So it's a long answer to the question, but that was the way I climbed in.
So, as far as solving problems in that way, I guess Andor season 1 felt very linear in that the characters went through very specific motions. Where in season 1, if 2 characters were to develop a romantic relationship, we would need to see it feels like, to stay true to the structure of that season, we would need to see the start of that, the courtship, and how that worked. But like you said, with the wedding or other characters that would dive into that in Andor, specifically thinking of Cyril and Dedra, you can kind of skip right over that and start in media res on that.
I guess so, but I mean, if you think about it, you know, I'm saying a lot about Bix and Cassian
Yeah,
in a very drive-by way. I mean, they've been together probably their very first kiss, and he talks about climbing over the wall and what her father said to when he climbed over the wall and catching him, and they were an item at one point, and I mean, you feel the fact that uh, it's a relationship that already has gone sour. So, I mean, I think I'm always trying to do that. Um, I'm trying to have prior life live off the frame and not and own it in a way that doesn't require the kind of exposition that is just gets so tiresome. It's just
yeah.
you really hate yourself when you have to say, oh, since last I've seen you. um, you know, um, it's just so inelegant, and so it's an aversion to that, and I think if you're really having real life live off the frame, and you really know it, and you really have a handle on the truth of it, you can be very pointillist about it and have it ring true.
That kind of brings me to one question I had about your approach to when you're really leaning into story. As I was watching these 3 episodes in particular, which I know your thumbprint is very much on the entire season, but these 3 are very particularly the ones with your name on the screenplay. These felt the most where you're telling stories in the cuts, very Hitchcockian, right? And I think very specifically of the moment where Vel catches her first glance of Cinta as she's getting in the hover limo with Take Homa.
Right.
And you're telling stories with those cuts. When do you feel as a screenwriter you're leaning into the storytelling with the images and those moments um, rather than with the dialogue or with uh, other things like that, other tools at your disposal? Because I think you're very deft with them in these 3 episodes in particular.
I mean, I think that's two separate things. One is, I mean, what? There's no dialogue that's any better in that scene than just her seeing her. There's nothing to say.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the fact that there is nothing to say. So it's almost like uh, they can't speak. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure that's a. I don't know. As an example, I'm not sure that's the. But
That's fair.
I'm always writing to cut. I'm always writing to cuts. Always, always, always writing to cuts. And I think that's the grammar of the show. You know, from a script sense, and I think I'm writing the top and the before we go into the room with the guys, I'm writing the top and tail of every one of the blocks for proof of concept, so that no one can say, "Oh, this idea isn't going to work." I want to make sure it's going to work, and I want to make sure it's going to take us through. But you know, I I think Danny probably is much. We just developed together. I think Bo probably picked up on a little bit more of that style with me when we worked on cards and whatever. And I think Tom Bissell, who came in really at I mean, you have to ask him, but uh, I think it was an eye opener to him about how rigorous we are about writing to cuts and about keeping things moving and really using tempo as a as really our grammar. I mean, it's a very much a tempo show, and it's just always been the way I've worked. I guess the only other thing that's germane is that there's so many times where I'm trying to work on a scene and it's not coming and I'm not getting there and I'm not happy and I'm reluctant to move into it. More often than that, like, oh, why am I not doing this? Why am I wasting time not getting there? It's because I haven't really super visualized it. It's because I don't have a visual hook for it, because I don't have an image for it. And that's
Hmm.
so often the key for me to break that reluctance and start the scene.
There's there's a moment in the opening sequence, and I was reminded again watching it in the room today, actually on the big screen, um, where Cassian is in the test ship, the TIE fighter,
The
the
Avenger.
the Avenger, um, and it's very much there's this you don't quite know how it works, and he doesn't quite know how it works, but as he's messing with the controls, there's a story being told through the images, through the cuts, through the production design of how it works, and it's something that it almost feels like George Lucas was sort of like the best at, but like Andor really encapsulated in a really great way that George Lucas language of it. And I'm wondering, um, because Andor is very much a different flavor of Star Wars than George Lucas Star Wars, um, but it's still in the same vein. How much as you're writing those sorts of sequences, you're referencing that kind of stuff?
Well, that's actually a really good example of like I've been bathing in credit here for the whole day and the whole last week. This is a place where really I'm laying back. Uh, I came up with the concept of what's going to happen. He's going to get in the ship and he can't really fly it, and and he's gonna put the accelerator on and crash backwards, but um, I can't. That's the kind of I mean, you could scribble that stuff down. You can do a very good job of writing it on the page, um, but that is really what Ari, the director, and really what Diego has to go in and just. I mean, that's some hardcore selling that moment. He's got to sell all that stuff. It's really, really on him to do that. And then in total fairness, the whole scene with the Avenger in the hangar, all the way through the escape, the final escape, is really Mo and Leo and TJ, the visual effects team. They know what I want to do. They know I want something really spectacular there, and they have a lot of ideas about things that they want to try. And it's very much like if you remember the scene where we have sort of the speed trap where Luthen gets pulled over by the arrestor in season one, and they're pulling him over for a traffic violation, and they're going to board his ship. How he escapes, and how that space battle happens is, again, those guys bring in a rough previs, and man, you just let them run. That whole sequence is theirs. We tweak it, we make adjustments. There's things we can afford to do, things that have to fall off the truck because we can't afford to do, and it's put to taste and whatever. But blasting the hole in the garage door, and how they finally is, sliding down the thing, and that whole fight, that's all them. They really do that, and they're brilliant at it, and they love doing it, and they're really excited about it, and it's really a pleasure to take that off your plate and go, okay, this is going to be taken care of.
That reminds me of something we talked about last time we talked. You talked a lot about really writing with the production design in mind, knowing what your collaborators are capable of, knowing what the rooms are going to look like, or how you're going to be able to film. And this arc specifically, well, and all of these arcs in the season felt much more open, and that you had more room to have more locations and more, like, it felt more expansive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if that was something that was that a result of more budgeting because of the success of season one, or better communication with the production designers because of the relationship built on season one, or a combination of the two, or just having a better relationship and knowing what you could get away with because of season one?
Well, there was no loosening of, I mean, the pressure was much more intense on season two because the streaming business model had collapsed in the interim. So, I mean, no one was saying, everyone loves the show, let's go spend more money. That was not the case. We were under a great deal more pressure because the demands for streaming shows the whole climate had changed in the 2 years we were making the show. I think the second part of it is probably much more accurate. We had a team that had really worked its ass off all season long, and we'd had all the successes that we've had. We learned how to do all kinds of things. So yeah, it was huge confidence in what people can do. So if there is delegating to be done, it's done with confidence. Everyone on the show is deputized. Certainly all the HODs are all deputized to be filmmakers on the show. I want anybody to raise their hand with anything that they have that can help out. I don't want anybody to be quiet about anything, and everybody knows that everything's available to everybody to understand about what we're doing. I'm not. I'm wondering if that answers your question or not.
I guess does that affect you in the script phase? Does that change how you approach your writing?
The process essentially was, we learned how to make the show after the COVID break. The COVID break taught me how to make the show. It's like, oh my God, I can make the show from New York, mostly. I can. The scripts have to be taken to levels that I never before imagined. And that means like just tearing the shit out of my own drafts, and then tearing the shit out of all the drafts the guys give me. But it also is predated by all of that, by all the work I do with Luke Hull. I mean, Luke is the first person I'm talking to long before we ever had the first writer's room or anything. Luke and I were getting to know each other. We were building ferrics. We were sending drawings back and forth together. You know, this is what the streets should be like. This is the architect. This is the architecture. This is the, you know, everything about it. And just having this really wild, imaginative collaboration on world building. Now, Luke was in our our 1 week writers room. He's in every session. He's there the whole way through, and so is Zana Wallenberg, who's the producer. So we that system, which had worked so well for us on the first time, we just like, okay, we're gonna do the same thing again. We added Tom Bissell because we thought we needed a little bit more, share the workload and maybe have a little bit more Star Wars CLT in that last block to keep us honest there and make sure that was being taken care of. But again, Luke and I, for a very long time before it ever gets to that, it's like, oh, figure out how to do the 4-year thing. But then we have to do Gorman. We have to really figure out what we can do with Coruscant and the Senate. We have to figure out a whole bunch of practical issues of things that can we do this? Can we possibly make this? How would we structure that? So he's really in there at the beginning, and then he again sits through the whole week of the story breakout, watching, and Zana watching bad ideas get shot down, watching good ideas develop. They've seen the whole show built in front of them, and they know where the plumbing is, and they know where the studs are, and there's no secrets there about why we've done what we've done, and that just becomes invaluable as you go along over the course of a year or so or longer to make the show.
How do you, as a writer, prevent yourself from getting daunted by having to pay attention to logistics and what you're capable of, and the production realities as much as you do, and still maintain creativity and honesty?
I mean, the limitations and the problems, sometimes some of them are just, I don't want to say all these, every problem we had was like, a bouquet, but so many of them lead to really incredible answers. I'll take an example from season 1. Danny wrote the Aldani sequence first, and went back to his life, and then COVID happened, and the Aldani festival was originally supposed to be 10,000 people, and after COVID they were like, we'll be lucky to give you 75 or 100, and so the whole story has to change. The whole method of the heist has to change, and you go, oh my God, look what we're gonna have to do. This is terrible. And in point of fact, it's actually much more poignant to have them be sad and dead enders and the end of the line and all the things that come out of that. Same thing that happened. Danny got burned again on season 2. He wrote a really great standalone episode with the introduction of K2 for episode 9, and it just was. We couldn't afford to do it. It became an impossibility, and it looked like, oh my God, what are we gonna? It's so cool, and you work so hard, and we love it so much. And in the end, it meant that we rejiggered that block in a way that it really wanted to be rejiggered, and it really wanted to be all about Mon Mothma, and it really wanted to be. It had been, as wonderful as it was, it had been imbalanced in a different way. We probably would have made it work if we'd had the money. We probably would have figured out a way to make it work, and we would have justified it in other ways. But in the end, our priorities were shifted back to where they really probably belonged in the first place, and it led to some simplification. And um, it's never happy to throw stuff away that you worked on, but when you're there's also, it's really the mark of professionalism to do that.
It sounds very much like the same sort of stuff you hear from the guys at ILM, where it's like, we get told we need to do the impossible, and we don't know how we're going to do it, but we've got a deadline and a budget, and we've got to do it, and we figure out the best way to do it, and there it goes.
Yep. I mean,
Um,
yeah. I mean, our show, I mean, look at our biggest limitation. We know where we're going. We know what the
yeah.
ending is. That's what saved our show. That's why if our show is good, it's good because we knew how we were ending and we knew where we were going all the way through. And that's a superpower.
Yeah, no, the
And a
show,
limitation, and a limitation, and a limitation,
the show really, having watched Rogue One again since the show came out, it really does change the tenor of the movie in a really great way, and it makes it hit a lot harder in a lot of ways. Um,
I haven't done it yet. I haven't done it.
I got to tell you, there's the sequence of music, and the scene that happens over Michael Giacchino's piece of music called "Your Father Would Be Proud" hits a lot differently now.
Interesting, interesting,
Yeah, I'm
interesting.
sure
Yeah,
you can
I'm
imagine.
going to do it when I get home. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was nervous about it, and everyone else watched it and let me know that it was going to be okay. But I don't know, I was kind of spooked, and I'll do it when I get home. Yeah.
Um, is there a particular um, moment from this first arc that you're particularly proud of how it turned out that you were nervous about, as far as the writing went, as you were putting it down, like, I don't know if this is gonna fly or sell.
Well, there was a lot of doubt amongst everyone that the take home story and the turn was going to play, and I felt pretty good about it. But I was a bit alone on that for quite a while, and you know, I don't usually, I don't get a lot of, I don't get a lot of pushback. Um, and I was getting some pushback on it. Wow, and I felt really, I felt like I could see it, I could feel it. I had friends who had, I'd had friends who had changed dramatically, and I had been really rigorous about thinking about what Ben Miles had done with Take Home in the first season. I thought that there was I thought the way he played it was really interesting, and there were some fault lines in there. I thought it was legit, so I really had to push that one over the line. Um, uh, in the end, everybody got on it, I guess when I saw I wasn't going to change my mind, they got as committed as I did, I really do think it works. When he goes sort of Fredo there, um, but that was a thing for a while. I think that would be something that was I was kind of happy to make work. And then also, I mean, the use of the Niamos theme at the end. I was really fixated on that. I didn't want to have some. I knew we were going to do another crescendo and another sort of big wraparound piece of music, as we had done in 103 and as we do other places. But I didn't want to have some super classy piece of music or some emotive. We really wanted to do, keep trying to do different things, and I really was fixated on the final imagery of Mon, and that's a place where, going back to your earlier thing. I mean, that image of her, dancing in that room where everybody in the room might think one thing, but you, the audience, and she are the only two people who really know that she's absolutely completely morally degraded herself, and she's
Yeah.
just in absolute chaos. And this weekend has been really a disaster of character for her, between what her daughter's done to her and the decision she's made about Take Homa. And so I had that image in my head. So I wanted to use that EDM music. And again, controversial, and okay, if you want to, we'll do it, we'll try it. And maybe it won't work. But again, uh, courage and conviction, and then a lot of great help, and pushing that through. I know that's not a writing thing, but to me it is. To me it is.
Well, it feels like when you're show running, it sounds like what you're saying is that writing is the whole package because
Everything. Exactly.
the
Exactly.
writing has to
That's
carry
what
it
you
all the
learn.
way through.
That's what I learned. That's what I really learned. I mean, um, it. I can't tell you how many days on the show I had to use. I'm you could look up how old I am. I mean, how long I've been doing. I mean, but every single thing I ever learned, I was using so many days of the week on the show, like everything, not just writing, or not just everything I learned about how to deal with people. And I'll say something else I don't usually say that doesn't get enough. I can't tell you the amount of writing that I did on the show, of memos versus what's on the screen, is probably 2 to 1. I I I cannot even begin to tell you how much of my life is spent writing memos and writing explanatory answers to things, or arguing for or against something. Um, uh, that's just a huge part of the job, you know. And the alternative, you just spend your whole life on the phone, and it's just so much easier for me to be smart on paper and get my point across, and not have somebody argue with me to put it on paper. So I mean, memo after memo after memo after memo. I mean, that's writing. That's the show too. It is all part of it.
Um, I want to ask really quickly. I'm not. I don't want to take too much more of your time, or I don't know how much more time you've got, or um, the Cassian's opening sort of monologue to his contact on Sinar, or at Sinar at the facility. Very moving right out of the gate. And I'm wondering, it almost felt like that whole sequence felt like the opening to a Bond movie in some way, right? Um, but that
But when has Bond ever been inspiring?
well, it's that I get that's what I'm
I
getting
mean,
at,
I
right?
know exactly what you mean. I mean, it looks like that when you look at the lab and the snow, and it looks like GoldenEye. I know what you're talking about. But, like, I'm trying to think, has Bond ever inspired anybody?
I think
He's convinced people to do shit.
the
I
end of
don't know,
No
maybe.
Time to Die.
Okay, all right, you know better than I do. But I mean, I don't think of Bond as an inspirer.
No, no, not at all, not at all. It was. This is that was not necessarily my point, but the beginning looks like that. But you've got
It
Cassian
does.
at the
It does.
begin. Um,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
but you've got Cassian at the beginning actually being very inspiring and delivering this very beautiful monologue to this person who might be very well giving up her life. Um,
Right.
and it has this thematic moment that I don't think it's spoiling anything that um, because I think it ties thematically to Rogue One and the end of Rogue One and what everyone gives up at the end of Rogue One.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if you can talk specifically about that moment as a microcosm for everything else, because it feels like thematically that's the road you put us on from right at the very beginning.
Right, but because this is a writing
Yeah.
interview, I can be a little bit more revealing than that, which is that I'm also telling you what he's been doing all year.
Yeah.
I'm telling you how he's changed from the guy that you saw say "kill me or take me in." I'm showing
Hmm.
you, oh my God, he's been obviously it's not his first mission, so he's been doing dirty deeds for Luthen all the way
Hmm.
through this whole thing, and he's found a way to talk to people to inspire them. I think also if you watch it really carefully and you think about it, there is it's not without some manipulation in it as
Oh
well.
yeah.
He's got to get her to do this thing, and it's a very efficient way to tell you how we're going to tell you this story for the rest of the season. And that's what you have to give people confidence. Like, can they, you always watch a show, you watch something, you go, can I trust the people that are telling me this story? And this is a place where saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And it has other values. So it's a scene that's really doing multiple things for me, which is really that's what you really want to have. You want to have scenes that are doing three, four things for you at the same time, and 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 also, I mean, in a really sneaky, ugly way or whatever. It's me going like, I want people who say that the show starts slow to be going, oh, here he goes again, and then and then because I know I have a sucker punch coming when he gets in the hangar. So it's a little
I
bit of
guess
that too.
I guess that's why it felt. I guess that's why I kind of led with the Bond thing, right? Like it's subversive where you have all of these really deep layers, but it opens like a Bond movie, so that if you are watching it just on the
No,
surface,
I know what you mean, though.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I actually know because that shot looks like GoldenEye, and because he's in
yeah,
a no, I know exactly what you mean. No, no, no.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just prosecuting Bond for a moment
Okay, no, that's fine.
yeah, no, no, no.
Um, but no, definitely with the manipulation, and it feels like it ties very much with the employees at the hotel in Gorman, and
Hmm.
flows through everything. Yeah, no, it's
Exactly.
really elegantly written. Um, uh, which is weird telling you this, you know this. Um, um, but yeah, I feel like I've probably taken up far too much of your time, but I could.
Almost to the hotel. So go ahead. You got any? You want to wrap anything up, and
Um,
we'll continue later on for later on the other pieces later
okay,
on.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
No, so I guess the other question is just like the biggest question is if you had one big lesson about writing Cassian walking into season two, or not just Cassian, but any of the characters as they went on this new journey, what would that what would that be? As you set out to do that, as you set out to create a new arc, because I guess that's
I
almost
don't know what you
like,
mean. I don't understand.
well,
I don't
okay,
understand.
well, okay, so you had to take each character on an arc, uh, to some degree when you came in and worked on Rogue One. And then when you sat down and worked on Andor, you took each character on an arc, right? And now you have to take them on another arc, but that arc has to bridge the arc that you created from season one to Rogue One. But also, you've created these sort of mini movies almost. How do you break down those arcs for each character, to fit in this piece? How do you approach the characters individually in that way, especially
Man,
while
it's
telling that?
just. I mean, the people that are going to end up. I mean, Mon Mothma has to be Mon Mothma. She has to leave the Senate because of something called the Gorman Massacre. I know I
Hmm.
have to do that. I know that. I know who Saw Gerrera is and what he means. I know that. There's no Luthen in Yavin, so there's certain. What does that mean? And I mean, I know that. I know where Melchi's going to go. I mean, the people that are legacy that are going to go. I have to deliver them. Everybody else is a jump ball. And I, I, I have to say this over and over and over again. I don't ever have an agenda or a big. I don't have a big wide lens most of the time. Most of the time, it's just teaspoon by teaspoon. What's interesting? What would happen next? What's a good scene for that to go? What's fascinating about what could happen to this person next? I really, I'm I'm hoping that my intuition and the natural compass inside me is going to lead me to where I need to go, but I'm really working on moments. I'm really working on small shit all the time to get there. I really am. It's really microscopic most of the time.
Hmm. And then that gets you to the and then
Yeah.
okay. I mean that makes perfect sense. Especially when you consider the moments. I don't want to talk too much about some of those moments now in the context of this, but they definitely are
All
there.
right. All right, to
Um
be continued.
yeah. That was really fascinating and enlightening, and here's part two of our conversation. Last time we talked, you talked about how you kind of work for the moments that you're writing toward teaspoon by teaspoon, and one of the moments that sort of felt most tremendous in 7, 8, and 9 was Cassian's "Who are you" moment, and it felt very much like an echo of Krennic's moment in Rogue One. Uh,
Oh yeah.
um, and I'm wondering what sort of teaspoons brought you to that moment.
Well, I hadn't thought about that. That's what Krennic says when he sees when he sees Cassian on
No,
the.
when he sees Jin actually,
Oh
and it's
yeah, 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 yeah.
but it's
I
sort of that same reversal because he actually has that rush of insight about who she must be and why she's
Yeah,
after
no.
him.
I think it's a different dynamic. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, I just I just thought. I mean, I knew that he was gonna they were gonna have the confrontation. I knew that that was gonna happen there, and I considered the fury that what kind of fight it would be, and probably had early discussions with Mark Maley, who's the stunt coordinator on the show, about where we would do it and how we would do it a little bit, and I think it was safe to say that even though in a sort of straight up cage fight, Diego would absolutely probably win 9 times out of 10 against Cyril. The fury that he would bring make the fight unusual. The fact that the just absolutely blind, raging fury, and it was sort of like being attacked by a wild animal. And I think it. I don't know if I had the idea before then or concurrent with that. Would be like, what? I'm in the middle of a. What is this? Who is this? I mean, the stunning incomprehensibility about being attacked by another Gorman human being, and it just didn't. Um, and so the "Who are you" was really obvious to me, um, and I had it in there, and it was somewhat controversial with production as they went through it. There were a lot of phone calls back and forth, and we want to get alternative lines, and it may not work, and you haven't really seen the fight, and um, I was not swayed by those questions. And so Diego and I were remembering last night in a separate interview that I had really called him on the phone the night before and said, "Man, I don't care. You can get all the alts you want, but sometimes when you get alts, everything is sort of half-assed. And I'm telling you, I'm going with this. Who are you? And like, don't get a great one out, and you can give me all the alts you want. I'm not going to use them, but we can play with it if you want." So.
Yeah, I watched yesterday on the Star Wars live stream. You had said that there had been some concern and some fighting, and I'm wondering,
Not fighting, but just like
yeah, like what was the or that you had to fight for it.
I just had to convince them. I mean, there's a couple different things, and look, there's times that I mean, there's some epic wrong. I mean, things I've been completely wrong about, and like they watch them happen, and you're like, wow, I was so wrong about that. But this was one I really was convinced with. I just thought it was the most Greek
Mhm.
essential thing you could have, and I think I even said to them, I'm naming the episode "Who Are You?" So. Like that's what I'm gonna do. I knew that was right. I knew it was right.
Um, one of the other moments is in the finale, going back to Narkina 5. Uh,
Mm, Narkina 3 or 2 or whatever.
whichever Narkina.
Narkina was 5 was a male human
Okay, yeah.
Narkina.
Um, going back to Narkina, or going back to a prison like Narkina.
Yeah.
Um, what was the was that always the fate you had in mind for Dedra, or what? Because that moment, which plays with no dialogue, and she plays it so beautifully, and the defeat that she has there, um, is so wonderful, and that's one of those great moments for her character that you built so wonderfully in these last two arcs with her messing up with Luthen and her Axis situation and Krennic coming back and just the way she gets chewed up and spit out. Um, what put you on that path of that trajectory for her?
When we finished season 1, I remember telling Luke, I go, because they're so careless about sets and storage is such a problem. They destroy everything. So I said, man, save me a piece of Narkina.
Hmm.
I'm not exactly sure what we'll do, but s- save a save a good camera ready piece of an Narkina. And then as season 2 started to sketch into focus, I have a number of people that I knew. I think I probably had the Anton Lesser, the Partagas side of it first. I thought, oh, that has to be because I love that character. I love that actor so much, and I think he's really an unsung hero in the show and doesn't get enough attention. And I called Anton and said, hey, I'm going to do this really cool thing here, and he was very excited. But one of the things I really wanted to do, I want you to feel really bad for them, for Partagas, for her. I want you to really be emotionally connected because I think part of if I'm going to tell the full story of authoritarianism and oppression and revolution, that, I mean, fascism, when it gets done destroying the people it wants to oppress and destroying the institutions it wants to destroy and ruining the communities it wants to ruin, it comes after its own. I mean, fascism always eats its foot soldiers and early proponents in the end. I mean, it's just shocking. And I wanted to get that. And she's really been, and Partagas, their sin is working too hard, kicking back, and she'd kick back and just ironed her uniform and played her part, she'd be fine. But she worked too hard, and fascism eats its young, and I want to make sure that you feel something when you see that. It's
Um,
worse than death, that, don't you? I mean,
yeah, yeah, no, it very much is. She took the punishment for believing too hard. Um, one of the things that kind of felt I'm wondering if you would have taken the other path, with the structure of the story and gone for the 5 years rather than with the 5 seasons rather than the 2 seasons. Would you have explored Cassian's quest for his sister differently? Was there a different plan for that? So we did get sort of that flashback where it kind of feels like Cassian sort of fleetingly thinking about, like, well, that's something I'd have liked to follow up on more.
I mean, I don't know if you had it. I mean, that's 60 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd probably be desperate
Well, I
to,
mean, I guess, do
to
you feel
pack.
like
You'd
do you
probably be packing in all kinds of crap that was tedious and
yeah. Well, I mean,
extraneous and
I guess, do you feel like does that feel like, since you opened with that, do you feel like that's a loose thread at any point here, or do you feel
No,
like?
I feel two things. One, I think um I think it's legit because we all have. I mean, maybe you may be the only person who has stuff that's unresolved in their life, but 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 you're few and far between. More important than that, it really became clear to me almost pretty quickly that her absence and the failure to return and the guilt of that was worth way more to me than any coincidental or potentially cheesy or suspicious or pick your poison return of a sister. It allows us to say at the end, I mean, which is really it's a throwaway line, and it's Faye Marsay who just gives great lines up. She just does the best job with them. When Mon comes to her and says, "Hey, you got to tell me about Cassian because he went back for Clay," and Vel says like he should stop saving people. I mean, what's he doing all the way through? You know, he leaves his sister behind. He leaves his mother behind and say, I'm gonna be back," but he never gets to see her again. He he you know, he's had to leave a lot of things behind. And having that hole really helps identify why he's what he's doing in Rogue too.
Um, Speaking of Clea, that episode with Clea that where she goes in and we get her backstory with Luthen and her mission into the hospital. Um, it's a really wonderful episode, even though it feels on the surface as though it's sort of a little bit outside of the on the surface it can seem as though it's a little bit outside the structure of how you'd set up the other episodes, right? Uh,
Definitely, it's
yeah.
completely different. Yeah.
And I'm wondering what the back and forth about whether or not you did it that way was like.
I promised Stellan in the beginning when he signed on, we were going to do 5 years, that he wanted to know he could die at the end of, he only wanted to do 2 seasons and would I kill him? And I said, look, I have the power of the pen. And so if you want out, I'll get you out. And one of the other things that we talked about is he's not a real crazy backstory guy, but where's this guy come from? What is he? What do I need? And do you know? Are you going to be able to come up with that? And I came up with a very ornate, very busy, complicated version of who he was, and a whole probably spent a couple days on some stupid thing, and we both agreed. I think it sank under its own weight and was like, how are we going to get this out? And boy, I don't know. Is this going to be that kind of show? And maybe in the 5 season show that would have had a place as a flashback. But um, he said, look, he goes, let's not worry it right now. But just make sure that it's not revenge. Didn't want revenge to be his motivator. And then when we did the show, when we did for season one, Elizabeth Doolittle just like she was just such a surprise. I mean, Cassie's his assistant. She was a third choice. Two other actors had gotten the part and then gotten bigger parts in other shows, and was like, all right. And she came in. Well, she's pretty good. Let's see how good she is. And oh my God, she's just tremendous. And you're going, okay, well. So then it's like, okay, well, and then the commitment to do the standalone episode, you couldn't put it in any earlier. And it really wanted to be about when the idea of him, when I was sketching the 4 season thing, and I had on my list of navigational scenes that must happen, Dedra has to go into the gallery. Has to be, they have to have a scene, right? And what better place than there to stage it? And God, how could he survive that? And so it just sort of naturally became that piece. And then finding the young girl who plays her was such a get because think about it, if you're an actor and half your performance is going to be informed by a 7-year-old, and your performance is going to be you're going to I mean it's going to affect what your performance is. It's part of your performance, and to have that have her come in and be so amazing and so Clea, such a great match. So that's how it happened. That's how it happened.
Um, I'm curious about one of the, you mentioned like there were times where you felt like you were wrong and you got it wrong, and I'm wondering if you could tell me one of those times where you were in the writing room or you were writing and it came back wrong and it came out better than you expected.
I mean, a really
No.
simple one. You know, when a really simple one. It's not a writing thing. It's a directing thing. Uh,
Hmm.
in When Edie comes to Dedra's apartment to have their lunch with them in episode 3,
Hmm.
and it finally just after it just gets so horrible, Cyril just gets up from the table and he disappears from the table. He goes to the other room. When you come back, he's lying on the bed. He's just sort of
Hmm.
in a semi-fetal, not even, he can't even, he's not even a fetal position. He's in some sort of, and he's just lying inertly on the bed as he hears them in the other room and then he gets it up. I hated that. When I saw the dailies come in, the blocking on that, I remember calling Arian and go, tell me there's other takes. I think this is so over the top and he can hear them and I hate this and I really hated on it and and they cut it in anyway and then Johnny was like, dude, you're wrong. This is really good and I mean, I saw it with an audience and people just they just loved it. It's I was wrong, completely wrong. But that happens all it happens regularly. And wrong is the, I was incorrect. Yes.
Um, when you were going through, like, what fueled you creatively? What sort of input were you taking to fuel yourself creatively as you were writing this season?
You know, what was I ingesting in terms of media?
Yeah, just books, movies, other TV shows. What kind of stuff was interesting you or piquing your curiosity while you were working on this?
I mean, couldn't read a lot of fiction while I was for I probably read the least amount of fiction I've ever read in my life over the last 5 years. This was a daily, literally every day. I'm no exaggeration. Every single day for 5 years, full use of all the imagination that you can summon. Not just for the writing of the scripts and fixing dialogue and pages and all that, or coming up with stuff, but wardrobe and casting and world building and all of the design things and all the, I mean, just so you don't have a lot of room left in your to go into somebody else's world at night, lay down with a book doesn't, it wasn't as comfortable. I read some fiction, but not a lot. We did watch. My wife and I have probably watched. I mean, it would be hard to name a show that we didn't watch. I've really watched. Been very, very, very comprehensive about watching things. So we watched a lot of shows. So I've seen a lot of television and a lot of films. Um, Mostly at home, almost exclusively at home because it started at COVID. Um, I mean, if you wonder what the things were that were influential,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I would say that I'll pick a couple weird things. I mean, Babylon Berlin was really an eye opener to me. I was like, wow, man. I mean, that show just blew the first 18 episodes, man. It's just like, wow, that you could be that big and that beautiful and that stinky. And I just loved it. I was like, that was like a Beatle album for me. Like, oh my God, oh man, this can be done. And very inspirational in terms of the scope of the show and the ambitions of the show. A crazy little show called French Village that was on for 7 years that we watched, which is this French show about 7 years in real time of the German occupation of France. It takes it from the day they invade to the day till after they leave when they're on the run. And it's literally what it says. It's a French village, and it started off very cheaply. Someone turned me on to it. Another writer turned me on to it and said, "Hey, you ought to dig this show." It starts off very cheaply and kind of threadbare, And then they obviously got traction in France, and by the time it gets to the second and third season, they have a hit, and a lot of the actors, two of the actors from the Gorman in the Gorman episodes are from the Terry Goddard and Richard Sammel, who both had big parts in French films. So we watched all of that. You know, podcasts, Mike Duncan's Revolutions, I listened to all the way through before. Um, uh, Hilary Mantel's A Place of Greater Safety, which is about which is about the French Revolution, which is just a masterpiece. Um, House of Government, which is this really insane survey of the Russian Revolution, by a guy who's been studying it his whole life, and digs into the molecular romance of young people because there's so many young people. It's a fascinating, I don't know, things like that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the kind of stuff I'm interested in. I think there's this mistake people have in looking at Star Wars and going, Star Wars is what you need to look at to figure out how to make Star Wars, and that's not the case. Um,
Never. No, I never watched any Star Wars. I couldn't
and
watch the other shows. I think in the beginning because Mando was so great when it started, and I just was like watching it, and then as I got into the show, my show, it was really unsettling for me to watch other Star Wars. I just always had the continual feeling I was doing something wrong, so I just stopped. I just couldn't do it, so I didn't watch any Star Wars. No.
um, last question, and just for my peace of mind, because maybe I was going crazy. I wrote a piece on Slash Film about it, but I felt like I was picking out of the Gorman massacre, Casablanca, and Battleship Potemkin. Like,
There, definitely there. I mean, Battle of Algiers and Z and oh God, what else are the comps? The Conformist,
mhm.
I mean the Conformist was really, what Cyril's going through. And also the Conformist from design point of view when we were designing Gorman, Luke and I, the marbles and the whites and the different things and having a city that's somewhere between Milan and Mecca and so I always think of it that way and Army of Shadows and oh my God, the list goes on and on and on. French Village too. I mean, obviously, all of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that
sure.
that moment where they start singing that Gorman anthem is very much the La Marseillaise, in Rick's Cafe a
It
little
is a
bit.
little bit. It is,
Yeah.
isn't it? It is, and I'm sure that was I'm get so burned into my mind that scene. I'm sure that it's really in there. It was also uh part of that's practical. It's like, oh my God, I got to get all these people out there. They got to be out there for a certain length of time.
Yeah.
They can't just keep screaming, oh, the galaxy is watching. And they have to be doing something. And what's really touching and what's really prideful. And the idea of the anthem, I was like, oh my God, of course they have an anthem. And then it was like, what's the anthem? So Nick Bertel and I, we listened to a bunch of national anthems and it was like, some are great, some suck. We have to write our own national anthem. So we wrote that song together. And um, yeah, but I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, right? No, but you're right. It does. Yeah, and Battleship Potemkin for sure. I mean,
The Odessa steps and
yeah,
all that
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've been someone in the interim has. I was unaware of the student riots in Mexico City and the parallels to the false flag and the snipers killing their own soldiers. I That was not on my radar, but apparently there's a comp for that for the riots in the '60s in Mexico City that were super violent.
Oh, wow.
It just came through the last 2 days. Two different people sent me that. Go, did you model this after that? I'm like, I don't even know about this. I know about Zapata, but I don't know about Mexico City in the '60s. No.
That's all the time we've got. I hope we get to talk again in the future on whatever you've got going next, or maybe more about this. I mean, I could talk about writing this stuff for ages. So thanks so much for all the time you've given me
Thanks
over
for
the
hanging
last
in, man.
couple
Thank
of
you.
years. Oh no, I wouldn't I wouldn't dream of doing otherwise. So yeah, if you want to read these, you can find them on Script Magazine's website. And I hope you enjoyed these. And I hope Andor's something you really dig as much as I do. I really enjoyed season 2. For me, you can find me at swankmatron.com. I've got my new Battletech book out, and you can find it on the shop there at swankmatron.com. And you can find me on social media, across social media at swankmatron, particularly Blue Sky lately. As far as Full of Sith goes, you can go to fullofsith.com, and you can listen to our entire back catalog of episodes, and, rate and review us wherever it is you listen to us. Send us an email at holocron@fullofsith.com, and be sure to tell your friends about us. So for Holly Fry, for super producer Mike Pilot, and for myself, Bryan Young, the Force will be with you, always.
Sir, if you'll not be meeting me, I'll close down for a while.